Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. Phil Giraldi will be with us in a moment on AIPAC's hatred and how they manifest it. But first, this. We all know how devastating war is. Lives lost, communities destroyed. But war can also threaten your financial freedom. That's where America's heading, our growing involvement in global conflicts. It means more spending, more debt, and a weaker dollar. That's a direct hit to your wallet. So here are three things to keep your eyes on: exploding debt, declining dollar, rising prices of gold and silver. These things are already happening. Goldman Sachs predicts gold could hit $4,500 an ounce by 2026. Why? Because central banks and smart investors are buying gold hand over fist. They know what's coming and they're hedging against it. Currency collapse, inflation, and market volatility. Gold has been a trusted store of value for thousands of years, and today we need that protection more than ever. Call Lear Capital now at 800-511-4620 or visit LearJudgeNap.com. No one is going to protect your wealth for you. You need to do it yourself, and now is the time. Bill Giraldi, always a pleasure, my dear friend, no matter how gloomy the world is and what we have to talk about. Thank you for your time. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. Why is it that there has been only a lip service and tepid at that response to the U.S. financed and approved and Israeli perpetrated attack on a residential neighborhood in Doha, Qatar?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's that, as you point out, the response has been tepid. Now, to a large extent, we expect from the mainstream media that every time Israel does something that is very, as our president would put it, very bad public relations or PR, every time they do that, they downplay the story, and it's quite astonishing how, to the extent which this takes place in the mainstream media, like the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune. They all have the same kind of phobia. But of course, a lot of these newspapers are either owned or owned in part, or have a heavily staffing that is Zionist. And as a result, they are doing a cover-up on what is going on. I think that's a large extent to what it is. But the fact is, we also get the same impact within the U.S. government, which, of course, was very tepid in its response to what happened in Doha, which, of course, is a close U.S. ally. In fact, unlike Israel, in that it houses an airbase with 10,000 U.S. airmen there. So this is ridiculous. We just see this over and over again. Let's not publish a story that is critical of Israel, and you have all of the Israel lobby lined up behind that, making sure everybody toes the line.
But what about the Arab resistance? What about the Turks? What about the Egyptians? What about the Jordanians? Is there no appetite to teach the Israelis a lesson that they can't do this with impunity just because the Americans are paying the bill?
Well, the question becomes, what could they do? Israel definitely has the upper hand in terms of military capabilities. When you're talking about Jordan, you're talking about Lebanon, you're talking about Syria. The Turks have a capability, but the Turks, of course, are separated by a considerable amount of land from Israel itself. They are a NATO member, and they also would be somewhat well. Erdogan, their prime minister, has been very critical of Israel, but and he's cut off, he's boycotted trade with them and done other things. But the fact is, to go to war with them is another thing altogether. And I think Erdogan is a little bit nervous about that, rightly, because as we all know, Israel is a nuclear power.
What did you think of Netanyahu going on national television before they caught the guy that pulled the trigger in the murder of Charlie Kirk, and denying that the Israelis murdered Charlie.
Well, to me, that was a confession that they did it. Uh, my only surprise is he didn't go on the air before the poor guy got killed, which would have been why not? He's done everything else. He's killed everyone else. He's killed maybe 600,000 Palestinians in Gaza. So what's to stop him from killing another American? He's killed Americans before. This guy's a monster, and all it did to me was confirm that there are perhaps cover stories about who did the killing. I'm not convinced that this kid that they finally caught acted alone. There certainly are a lot of discrepancies in the account and discrepancies in the videos about the rifle and other things.
Interesting. When Netanyahu does something like attack a civilian infrastructure and kills civilians, but not the intended targets, is there political fallout for him at home?
I think there probably, I'm not an expert by any means on that, but I would think there is fallout because it would be seen, I would think, by many Israelis as a failed mission. Just like to a certain extent, the attack on Iran was a failure both by Israel and the United States, and the Iranian response was more robust than anybody expected. So this is dampening the mood, I think, in Israel for extending these conflicts. But there seems to be a high percentage, again approaching 80 to 90% of the public, that is fully supportive of massacring 2.5 million Palestinians in Gaza and a couple million more on the West Bank.
Why do you think AIPAC threatened Charlie Kirk? Now, Bill Ackman, who's the major donor and at whose home the alleged threats took place, has denied that there were threats, and of course, and so it was very, very amicable. But why did AIPAC threaten him? First, they tried to bribe him. One report said $150 million. And he declined to take any of their money. And then they tried to intimidate him. And he told people shortly before he was murdered that he was afraid for his safety and he couldn't stand Netanyahu, who he felt was behind all this.
Yeah, the offer of the money apparently came directly from Netanyahu. That's not in dispute, I don't think. And of course, AIPAC and the rest of the Israel lobby would be on top of Kirk because basically he's got a big audience, and he was clearly moving in a direction where he was objecting to some of the things. And this is kind of where I and a lot of other critics of what is going on there are about, which is that this brings the United States as an accomplice and player into these disastrous policies and these killing fields that Netanyahu delights in. So Kirk was coming around to that point of view. Good Christian. He was apparently preparing to convert to Catholicism and get away from the more harsh Protestant groups that tend to support Israel, no matter what Israel does, based on what they claim to be in the Bible. So
you're talking about the Ted Cruz, Mike Huckabee folks.
Yeah, Huckabee and Cotton and yeah, those people. They basically are the ones in the government that are on board. Well, so is our Speaker of the House.
Yes, and the Secretary of Defense as well.
Yeah, he was just over in Israel, and Israel just had a visitation of a group of 20 plus congressmen from the Democrats and 20 plus from the Republicans, and more recently 250 American politicians 5 each from the 50 states. All this stuff is paid for by AIPAC and these other groups, and they get away with it. They do it illegally because we have in the United States what they call the Foreign Agents Registration Act, where any group acting in the interest of a foreign government has to register. They have to be transparent in terms of their finances. And guess what? They cannot engage in U.S. politics. And
why isn't AIPAC indicted for violating FARA? You go to jail for this.
yeah, it's because the United States government of people like Donald Trump and his predecessors are terrified of the Israel lobby. And this is the way the system works.
How dangerous to the United States of America is its subservience to Israel?
It is critically dangerous because it leads the United States into taking initiatives in support of Israel, like we've seen in recent months. Since Trump has been around, we've seen this in Syria, we've seen this in Lebanon, we've seen this certainly in Gaza in spades. We've also seen it now in Qatar. We've seen it in Iran. The United States is doing things that are not in the interests of the American people or in the interests of the American state. This is not what the United States was created for, to go around the world and engage in illegal and worse than that actions on behalf of a tiny little state that unfortunately has a lot of money, that it's been able to corrupt our political system and corrupt our politicians. And this is the reality of it.
Now, what can we do about it, Phil?
Well, we could enforce FARA. That would be a starter. And we could
That's the Foreign Agent Registration Act.
Yeah, and that would require them to register, require them to report their actions, require them when they go over and have meetings with the Israeli embassy people and Mossad, and require them not to get involved in U.S. politics, which they do all the time. So it would stop them from doing all these things. And beyond that, I would like to see a government that when Israel behaves badly, which it does almost all the time, would denounce them and treat them the way we would treat any other country that would be carrying out genocides, creating war crimes, and doing and corrupting our own politics.
Is there a relationship between AIPAC and the Central Intelligence Agency?
Not as far as I know, but I've been out of the government for some time, and whether this has developed. Back in my time, I'll be perfectly frank with you, people like me who were field officers, case officers, who worked overseas, we despised the Israelis. They were always around. They were always coming around and trying to get favors. They were always in your face, and they were always lying through the teeth about what their own knowledge and experience were. And so those of us in the field couldn't stand them. And there were people apparently at headquarters with whom I had no contact, who were put in place by the politicians to represent Israeli interests. But I don't really know to what how that has continued. Ray McGovern has dropped comments a couple times saying that the people who work on the Middle East have a large hunk of Zionists in their staff. But I don't know that for a fact.
Do Israeli citizens receive free health care and higher education?
Yes, and we pay for it.
Why? Why should we pay for it? Why should we pay for their defense bills if they give away things that we don't give away here? I'm not in favor of the government giving away health care. Would be a disaster. But why should we be funding this?
We fund it because the Israel lobby has succeeded in corrupting our system to such an extent that they own the politicians, or most of them. There are a few good people, Tom Massey, and others. But the fact is that when a good politician arises and starts to criticize Israel, Israel raises a ton of money, or the lobby raises a ton of money to get rid of them. They got rid of two black congressmen in the last round of voting, and they spent $25 million, was a record, to get rid of these two guys and put up replacements for them. And they talk about Tom Massey. I've heard comments from some of them that they're willing to spend $100 million to get rid of him. That's the kind of cash they have. They gave Donald Trump $100 million. The casino people in Las Vegas, Israelis, gave Donald Trump $100 million to make sure he did the right things once he got in office, which he emphatically has done.
How does the average middle class American citizen benefit from our subservience to the state of Israel?
The average American, and not to mention unaverage Americans, get nothing out of it. This is the only ones who conceivably, as a collective or as a group, who benefit from it are the politicians. Joe Biden got something like $2 million from the Israel lobby. I think Cruz is in the $500,000 range. And of course, I've just spoken about Trump. We're talking about multiples of millions of dollars that have accrued to Trump as a result of his hard line on Israel.
You're talking about money going to campaigns. You're not talking about money going personally to these presidents, are you?
Well, sometimes this money is fungible. If you got the money in your campaign and you have a certain freedom of how you spend it, well, there you go. I mean, I would say these people personally benefit, and if they go out of politics, they find that there are incentives out there for well-paid employment. So we see that too.
Have the Zionists ever threatened you the way they did Charlie Kirk?
I've been threatened a number of times. They've never kind of couched it in terms of coming from a Zionist source. It's just usually, well, in my older days, it was that because I was a converted peacenik, which a lot of people don't like. And when I got into what was going on in the Middle East in more detail, I've had specific threats in terms of my views on the state of Israel and how the United States should basically cut it off from its current stance in support of it.
I guess this is not going to change unless some series of events, I can't even predict what they could be. I can't even hypothesize about what they could be, change Trump's mind, or a Thomas Massey-like person, thinking like Congressman Massey, gets elected to the White House.
Well, I would rather suspect that a change is coming because the as you well know, the percentage of Americans who are now supporters of Israel is down low and sinking. And this means that this could well become an electoral issue. And the American public could just become finally fed up with what is going on. And basically, this could have an impact in terms of who exactly is elected to Congress or elected to the House or to the Senate. And it could have an impact on the president. I honestly think that somebody would surface like Massey did. Massey was the one who reported that virtually everyone in the Republican Party in Congress had a minder, an AIPAC or Israel lobby designated minder among their staffs. And these people would keep an eye on them in terms of Israel issues. And if they weren't doing the right thing by Israel, they would report this back to AIPAC and others who would start putting pressure on them. So this is the kind of political system we've come up with. And if the American public knew more about this, I think the American public might well respond by at least demanding someone who's several measures more moderate on the issue of Israel than what we've seen so far.
You're actually being very charitable by calling these people minders. Congressman Massey called them babysitters.
That's right. That is right.
He's very colorful in his Kentucky verbiage. He's not all Kentuckian. He graduated at the top of his class at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Right. You're talking about a very smart person here, extremely well-read and educated. But realistically speaking, it would be bring about a sea change, or a sea change in American thinking would be necessary. To your point, you're probably not following because you don't live here, the race for mayor of New York, but an independent candidate who's the former governor, former mucky muck in the Democratic Party, Andrew Cuomo, announced 2 days ago that he's rethinking his support for Israel in New York City, making this announcement, believing it will help him electorally. He's running against a Democrat who says if Netanyahu lands at LaGuardia or JFK airports, he'll be arrested by the NYPD and shipped to the ICC in Belgium.
Well, I wish him well, the latter one. And I would like to see Netanyahu, when he goes to the UN next week, snatched off the street by the Immigration and Customs
enforcement. Yeah. Well, Rudy Giuliani, this was for show, but he did it, had Yasser Arafat arrested in the middle of an opera where he was viewing an opera at the Metropolitan Opera House, and put him on a plane and shipped him back to Palestine.
Yeah. Well, Netanyahu is going to be meeting with our president again the day before, I believe. He's going to appear at the UN. So there are more shenanigans. These are where the cover stories are concocted. This is how the system works. Why is Marco Rubio over in at the Wailing Wall again? I'm going to suggest. I think in my next article that when Netanyahu shows up in Washington next week, we should make him go to the National Cathedral or to the Roman Catholic Basilica and sit there for a service before anybody will talk to him.
I don't think you'll see that happening.
No.
But the American politicians all go to the Wailing Wall. There's a picture. The same picture was on the front page of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal of Rubio and Netanyahu at the Wailing Wall, the two of them looking glum, serious, pensive, and religious.
Well, Rubio will get his instructions from his Lord and Master, and he'll come back and he'll give them to Trump. But with Trump, he'll have to explain it 3 times in simple words, and Trump will still be confused. But that's the way our system has come around to be, and that's why it's depressing to get up in the morning these days.
Have you ever encountered this congressman from Florida who wears an? I can't imagine you have. If you do, I want to be there, and I want our cameras there. Who wears the IDF uniform on the floor of the House of Representatives?
Yeah, Brian Mast.
Yeah.
I haven't personally encountered him, but Florida also has Randy Fine, who has spoken up about exterminating all the Palestinians. So we've got some fine congressmen that really are decent human beings, and we should be proud of them.
Randy Fine has a great nemesis and our dear friend and colleague. In fact, he's terrified of him, Max Blumenthal. Max,
yeah, that's right.
Congressman Fine is a little on the plump side, in fact, quite a bit. And when Max showed up with a camera and a microphone in hand, he said Congressman Fine, for the first time in his adult life, ran. Oh, well. Thank God for a sense of humor. Thomas More cracked jokes with his executioner believing as much as he did in a sense of humor. You and I don't think we're about to be executed, but we do have a sense of humor over these very, very glum things, Phil. Thank you for monitoring all of this for us the way you do, my dear friend.
Well, if Mr. Rubio has his way, he might be confiscating our passports because we go on social media and criticize Israel. So
I think that Congressman Mast, and if
Right.
I'm wrong, I will correct myself on air, but I believe Congressman Mast has introduced legislation to that effect.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So
this
well,
is
thank you, Phil Giraldi. A pleasure, my friend, no matter what we're talking about. All the best to you. We'll see you again next week.
okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you then.
Of course. More on this at 4:00 from the person who knows as much about it as anybody else, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.